Hey friend, it is Brandon Gustafson. Welcome to Assisted Living Investing today. I want to apologize for yesterday. This is take two of our attempt to talk about the assisted living industry under the Trump administration. For those of you who are new here, I'm Brandon Gustafson. I help beginners like you launch their assisted living business in the next 12 months. Excited to have you here with us on our live. And as I mentioned, we're going to be talking about assisted living under the Trump administration. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, add this to the screen. If you need some help getting some guidance and need some assistance, I have a free resource for you. Go grab it at assistedlivinginvesting.net/BP checklist. It's a business plan checklist that will give you all the things that you need to hit on a business plan that is going to allow you to get what you need for an assisted living business. So again, that's assistedlivinginvesting.net/BP checklist. We're going to have a ticker going across the bottom of the screen here throughout the live here. And those of you who are live, number one, type in your questions. We'll have some time for questions here at the end of the call for sure, or not call, at the end of the live session here. So I want to make sure that you are getting your questions answered. So type those in. We'll have time for that. And if you are new to me, go ahead and type in newbie down below. And for those of you who are in here, if you could please just comment that you can hear me. Yesterday we had some issues with the audio. I just want to make sure that it is working. I got a new microphone, trying this on a different computer, hoping that will clear up a lot of the issues that we were seeing yesterday. Because of that, I may have a little bit of technical difficulties. I'm trying to adjust the size of some of my stuff here so I can see all the comments as normal. So if you just comment, we hear you in the comments. That would be helpful, just so I can make sure that you're able to hear me. So with that said, I want to give you a little bit of background on who I am and why I'm qualified to talk to you a little bit about assisted living. Awesome, thank you. Thanks for letting me know you can hear me, and hopefully it has issues. If there are issues as we go through this, please let me know, because I want to make sure that we get this information out to you. Now, my background, I own 2 assisted living facilities. I've done this since 2020. I operate them remotely. I live in Utah and have one of my facilities in Colorado and another one in Idaho. So I've been doing that for a little over 4 years now. I've secured over $1.5 million in SBA funding. So I've got a lot of experience doing that. But more than that, I have a lot of experience in the healthcare industry. So I have a master's in healthcare administration. I've worked in the healthcare industry for over a decade and have worked under a lot of different administrations as well. Have seen a lot of the impact that different administrations can have on the healthcare industry as a whole. And so I want to talk with you a little bit about that today, so you know exactly, what does this mean? We've got a new administration. How's that going to impact things, and how's it going to work? So I want to make sure we touch on that for you in today's video. I have worked largely in government programs as well. So Medicare, Medicaid, and Medicare Advantage, some of the veterans benefits as well. So I've got a lot of experience in that world and have seen how different administrations can impact healthcare. For good or bad, or just in general. And so we're going to really get into that in today's video. So if you have any questions just in general about healthcare, I'll try to answer that. If I don't know the answer, then that's fine. I can point you to in the direction of places that can really help you out with that. And as I go through this, we're going to go through generally I talk about my 5-phase approach. Number one is building a business plan. And it's super important. We'll talk about it a little bit here today, but I really want to get into phases 2 through 5 and the impact that it's going to have on you, the Trump administration will have on you as you're trying to find a house, as you're looking for funding, as you're navigating the rules and regulations, and as you are trying to just run your business. Those are the things that we're going to really hit on hard here. So as we get into this, what I want to mention to you is we have experienced this before. We have had a Trump administration before. 2016 through 2020, President Trump was in office, I would say it was very beneficial for small business owners. There was a lot of good that happened during that time. This is pre-COVID for the most part, and the economy was doing very well if you think back to that period of time, and very well for small businesses as well. I was just on the phone with a friend of mine who had a small business, and it was doing very well during that time, and has taken a hit in the past few years. And whether that's due to administration or just COVID and different types of things, that's up for debate. But it, the economy was doing well. Small business was booming at that time. There was less regulation, and you see this in conservative leaning administrations. Generally, there is going to be less administration. I'll get into an example of how I see that in my own way of operating businesses, one in Idaho and one in Colorado, here a little bit later in the video. So make sure you stick around for that, so you can see exactly what that looks like. I think there's going to be more favorable rates, and I think that's something that probably would have happened regardless. I think rates are going to start coming down and stabilizing, but I feel pretty confident that that's something that would be coming up as well. But we saw that during the previous Trump administration. The world also, we just want to note that the world has changed a lot since that period. Excuse me, since that period of time. We have had COVID since then. We've been under a different administration. The world is vastly different. There are wars going on throughout the world, and the impact that has on the economy is something that is real and something that needs to just be taken into consideration. So while we have experienced this before a Trump administration, things are different. World is different. Things could definitely change. So I want to give you an idea of what that looks like from my perspective, and how it's going to impact you as you are trying to get started in assisted living. I also want to try to make sure this is as nonpartisan as I can be with this, and just be very upfront with you on what I see in the industry, a little bit of my opinion as well on where things are going. So as I go through these different impacts it's going to have on housing, funding, on rules and regulations, and on operating a small business, I would love to see any questions that you have. So go ahead and type those in. I'll try to stay a little bit more on top of any questions that come in during the live session. But we'll also have a good chunk of time at the end of this to answer any questions that you have. So make sure you're typing those in. And again, any issues with audio, please let me know sooner than later, so we can work through that, because I don't want a repeat of yesterday. So, all right, let me shift over here. Impact on housing. Okay. So what I'm seeing, the impact on housing under the Trump administration, what I would see is, I think we're still going to be in a housing crisis. I don't think that's going to change very much at all. I think there's still a huge demand and a shortage, and a short supply of housing. And I think that's going to continue throughout the process for years to come. I think this is an issue that would have been in place under any other administration as well. We still have a lack of housing. Now, when it comes to deportation, I have an understanding that I think there are some illegals that are in and taking houses, and so if that is the case, then that could lead to some houses coming open. Though I would say the likelihood of that population being in a house that works really well for assisted living is probably limited, and so the impact of it on a home that you would be using for assisted living, I would say, is probably not that big, but it's also something that you want to be aware of. There's possibly more of an impact on jobs in that, from that standpoint, with people who may have hired illegal individuals to work at their facilities, and I would not suggest that you do that, because you should be doing things the way that you should be running the business correctly. But that could definitely be a thing. But its impact on housing, I don't know that it's going to be that large. Ultimately, I don't see that there's going to be a lot of impact under a Trump administration for in the short term, especially for housing. I think the prices will still be high. I think in the short term, especially, rates will still probably be high. We'll get into funding and the conversation about rates and things here in just a second. But as far as the volume of houses that are available, I don't know that it's going to change much. Although I will say that, just for the sole purpose of being through the election, regardless of who was going to be in place, which administration would be in place, it does provide some stability for business owners. And so I do think that, um, now that we are through that period of time, that there will be a lot more people that are open to buying and selling homes and businesses and things like that. And in a world where small businesses, uh, like assisted living, really thrive, need that in order to thrive. I do think that that will open up some other extra opportunities. That there will be people that are willing to move and make changes with the way that they are operating, and potentially looking to sell their businesses. So from that standpoint, it would not surprise me if we see more opportunities of existing facilities coming available. But from a house that I'm going to buy and convert standpoint, I think that is going to be a limited amount of change there. So that's the impact that I can see on housing under a Trump administration. Now let's talk about the impact on lending here. The impact on lending, and this is something that I think there's a little bit more potential for impact here, though it's hard to know if this is going to be an impact, just because of the times that we're in, and where things are moving, with the Fed, or if it is because of the Trump administration. Um, I think that is remains to be seen, and we probably wouldn't know the other way. So, but I do think that rates will likely continue to come down. I do think that that's something that's going to happen, and that's going to be beneficial for you as you are trying to find opportunities to obtain funding, and it also not only opportunities to find funding, but also funding that works with rates and terms that will work for you. And by that, what I mean is rates right now are very high. So SBA rates, we have SBA 7A loans. They are adjustable. They adjust with the Fed. And so when we got in, we were looking at rates that were typically, I would say, between 5 and 7%, and those rates are now up in the nines and tens. And what that has done is added a couple $1,000s to our debt service payments, and that is a significant hit on us as a small business. It makes it very hard to operate. And so with rates coming down, it will make it a lot easier for you from a debt service perspective, and allow you to be able to afford things a lot easier when you're doing your underwriting, and especially when it comes to debt service. So that's something that I want you to also be aware of, that rates coming down is going to be beneficial for you. I still, regardless of what was going to happen, you will still need to build a solid business foundation. You're still going to need to meet those lender requirements, and those are not going to change. I would say lenders might be a little more um, excited. It doesn't seem like the right word, but willing to have conversations with you under a Trump administration. I can see that happening, where banks will be a little bit more open because they have seen that economy in the past and they know that it went well. And so I think that benefits you, from those types of opportunities, that you'll have banks that are a little more willing to put out loan products, and be a little bit more willing to lend, but you still have to be building out this business foundation. So grab the business plan checklist. We've got the link for that, assistedlivinginvesting.net/BP checklist. We also have a live session next week that is on the business foundation basics and what that looks like, and how that's going to work. We're going to be building a business plan together in that workshop. If you can make it to the live session, then I would love to have you there. We already have about a dozen people in there. So I'm super excited to do that. But for those that aren't able to make it live, we will be selling the replay, or you'll get instant access to the replays once those are done as well. So you can get that again. It's assistedlivinginvesting.net/BFB for business foundation basics. Would love to see you there at that live session, because you're going to need it. You're going to need to have that business foundation. You need the business plan. You need the underwriting. You can go grab that at the business planning guide, assistedlivinginvesting.net/BPG, as well. So go and grab one of those tools, to really help you out in building this business foundation, because you need it, regardless of what's going to happen here. I would also say that an improved economy, which I believe is going to happen under a Trump administration, and we'll get into that here when it gets to how to run a business and the impact there. But under an improved economy, that will also lead to more lending options. I think it opens up doors for for lenders to feel a lot more confident in giving people more money, taking more risk, because the economy is going well, and they're going to look at that as opportunities to find ways to lend. So that's something else that I can see here is an improved economy is going to equal more lending options that are available, and banks that are willing to work with you. So that's another piece that I want you to be aware of is just lending. I think is going to be on there. And I can see a few people in the comments, and you're welcome, Tanya, and Miss Sunday. Thank you as well, and hoping that the audio is working here, continuing to work. So, let's get back over to here. I just want to make sure I'm not missing any comments. Let's look at the impact on regulation. So this is the piece that I was talking about earlier in the video, where we're in more conservative leaning states or governments. There is less regulation. It's just naturally what happens. And I've mentioned this in the past several times. There are less regulations in more conservative and more red states than there are in more liberal or blue leaning states. It's just kind of a fact of how that all shakes out. To give an example, we operate in Colorado, which is a very liberal leaning state. And we also operate in Idaho, which is very conservative. And what we have found there is in Colorado, we have a lot more red tape. We have a lot more things that we have to go through. When we have a survey, there's a lot more that goes into going through that entire survey process. When it feels like at least once a month, if not 2 or 3 times a month, there's another regulation that comes that we have to be aware of. There is mandated increases to wages in Colorado that we don't see in Idaho or some of the other states that I'm aware of. There are things that just come out consistently, reporting things that we have to do, different surveys. There is a whole lot more work. There's a lot more red tape. And in order for you to keep, obtain, or maintain your license, there's a lot more that goes into it in those types of states. What I would say is in more liberal leaning states, there's probably more government type programs that are available to individuals. So it's just something, there's a bit of a trade-off there. That doesn't mean that there's more programs for you to take advantage of. There just are more programs that are there to help from a welfare standpoint. It's a little more of like a welfare state, is the best way I could explain it. There's those types of programs. It doesn't impact you necessarily as an assisted living owner. Just there's more potential for the consumers of those products that are available. So that's something you want to be aware. Whereas in Idaho, it's more conservative leaning. We have a lot more free reign on how we're going to operate our business, on how we're going to obtain the license. It's still healthcare. It's still heavily regulated. There's still a lot that goes into that. But from a operating your business and caring for your residents standpoint, and how you handle and deal with state surveys and things like that, it's a lot easier. So what I see here is I really feel like in a Trump administration, there will be less regulation. Hands will be untied. You'll have a lot more opportunities to operate the way that you would like to. It will be a lower barrier to getting into the industry, I think. And be a little bit easier for you to operate. All of that with the understanding that you're still dealing with healthcare. There's still a big level of a regulation and things like that you have to meet. You have to meet certain standards. You're going to still have to have your policies and procedures in place. There's still licensing processes. There's still fees. There's still a lot of red tape there. There's just going to be less because the federal government will be at that level. The other thing that I've seen, and I don't know if this is going to touch assisted living as much because it is a Medicare program. It's under the CMS umbrella. But I have heard, as I've been just kind of paying attention to the landscape of how this is all changing, that there could be a decentralization of some of the federal organizations, and they would go back to the state. I was listening to a podcast about this yesterday. They were talking about the Department of Education and potentially giving that back to the states. as an example, and decentralizing it so that it's no longer a federal agency and education goes back to the states for them to deal with. I don't know I've actually heard that as well with like hospice and home health, but I don't think that that's going to happen with assisted living because it falls under an umbrella that is largely in long term care. And while it doesn't have a federal standard, it's already at a state level. Um, the the impact that Medicaid has on it, with Medicaid being a federal program run at a state level, I don't see there being a ton of impact there. I think less regulation will be a little bit easier to get in and understand exactly what's going on, remove some of the barriers to entry, but still healthcare, still a lot of stuff there. Now, as far as these government programs that I've been mentioning, Medicaid is specific to assisted living. You're not going to be dealing with Medicare or Medicare Advantage or anything like that. But I've also read up on a few things that there's the possibility of privatization of Medicare, and I don't know that that is necessarily because of a Trump administration. I think that that could be simply because Medicare is getting to a point where it's starting to sunset. I don't think it was ever intended when Medicare was created. The life expectancy was much shorter than it is today, and so the intent with Medicare when it was created was, okay, we'll do this. You pay into it until you retire, then you retire, and then you're on Medicare for maybe 5 years. In the very rare instance, you're on it for 10 to 15 years, and then you'll pass away. And that's just not the case anymore. People are on Medicare for a lot longer than they used to be. And that has led into a lot of not having the funds available for Medicare. And so that's something to kind of keep an eye on the horizon. And that's where I could see some leaning towards privatization. This is where like Medicare Advantage is kind of it's a hybrid type of a program that involves Medicare and private insurance. I could see that getting bigger, possibly traditional Medicare going away somewhere down the line. I don't think that's an immediate thing, but I could see that and becoming more Medicare Advantage type programs focused. I don't know that that will happen with Medicaid. I'd be really interested. I could see it on the horizon where you have some kind of a hybrid type of a program there as well. But not something that I've actually seen. But that's something that you want to kind of keep an eye on. Now, if you are dealing with private pay or even long-term care insurance, this isn't going to be something that's going to impact you. But if you are dealing with one of those government programs, Medicaid, for example, then it's something you want to keep an eye on. I don't anticipate that changing. CMS it was put into law. It is a federally funded and backed and run program. It's different from some of the other agencies that exist inside of the federal government. So I think it's different, but it's something to keep an eye on. I don't think, especially in the short term, I don't think there's any impact on assisted living from that standpoint, other than maybe hands are loosened up. The red tape goes away a little bit. There is what I could see there as far as an impact on regulations. All right, let's get into the impact on small business. And of all the things that we've been talking about today, this is the one that I would say there's probably a more positive impact here under a Trump administration than any of the other ones. I think the other ones, there would have been change that is outside the influence of an administration, housing and some of those things. I think there's not a lot of change that's going to go on in those, other than just kind of natural stuff that happens. However, the impact on small business under a Trump administration, we know from past experience that it was very beneficial for small businesses. I think there will be lower tax rates. I've heard a lot of talk about that. And we won't get into tariffs and income tax and things like that, but the potential impact of tariffs being increased and income tax being decreased could really benefit small businesses and benefit their employees, which is something that I could really see benefiting small businesses for sure. Now, the no tax on tips or even overtime, I've heard talked about as well, is another thing that I think could benefit you as a business owner, and making sure that you have the right employees and happy employees that are excited to come to work because they feel like they're getting fairly compensated for the work that they're doing. So that is another huge one that I could see, that those the tax rates, really it comes down to taxation, that could have a huge benefit on your ability to be profitable and also pay your staff more, effectively pay them more without having to pay them more, because they get to keep a lot of that money, which I think could be very, very beneficial to this industry that is already hard when it comes to staffing. It's the most difficult part of running this type of a business is staffing, and that could really, really benefit people as we get into this. As far as like being a business owner, there's also going to be other types of tax deductions. I've heard about the qualified business income deductions that exist, that are there for taxes as well. When you are working on these, if you're buying the real estate and you have the business, there's a lot of tax benefits that come into that. These are all things that I don't personally know. I'm not a CPA, but I would suggest that you find and hire one or talk to one about the impact that a lot of this could have on your business. There's a podcast Mark J. Kohler does. I worked with his CPA firm. They kind of split that up, and so my accountant is now a standalone. But worked with him, and then we also do our stuff through him for our attorney. They're our attorney's office, but he does podcasts on a regular basis. And he did one of tax implications under a Trump administration and under a Harris administration, and pros and cons on both sides. So that's a really good resource for you. Again, that's Mark J. Kohler. I think if you go on YouTube, you can find it, or they have a Main Street Business podcast as well, where you can get a lot of that information. So free plug to him, but he has a lot of really good information on that, and I think that's worth listening to, so you can understand what some of the tax implications are for you as a business owner as you get into this. And that's something that, honestly, when I was getting started, I did not think a lot about, but has been very beneficial for us as we have owned this. As from a tax perspective, it's been very beneficial to own businesses and own the real estate. So that's something, just kind of there's probably a lot of you that listen to this, you're like, this is why I want to do it, is for those reasons. But I'm sure there are a lot of you out there that are listening and you haven't even given that a thought, and this is how you can really benefit, because you're not going to give as much of your money away in taxes, which is nice. I also think that there will be more access to capital, and this goes back to what we were talking about in funding, where there's less regulation, and so I think that equals excuse me, that will lead to more funding options and more funding opportunities, and lenders being a little more willing to work with you on funding opportunities. So that's another thing. I think there will be more access to capital from that standpoint, and I also think that investors will be more willing to look at opportunities as the economy improves, and that will be easier to raise funds, to do investments and things like that. So your access to capital, I think, is going to also increase quite a bit under a Trump administration. So that's something else that I see. Let's see. I just want to make sure I'm. Okay, yeah. So I've got a few questions here, but nothing right there. Okay, I'm going to flip back over to this, and then we'll get into the Q&A session here in just a second. Now let's talk about my outlook overall on the industry and what I am seeing with this. So my outlook, I am still bullish on the industry. I would have been bullish under a Harris administration. I still think assisted living is a great industry to be in. I think now is the perfect time to be getting into it. You have the silver tsunami coming, and I think that it is also something that is only going to increase. And I think we're at the beginning phase of a lot of this right now. So I think now is a really good time for you to be in on this. I also believe that less regulation is going to be better for the industry as a whole. I think it's something that is going to benefit people as they're looking to get started. I think the barriers to entry are going to be reduced, and I think it will be easier for you to get into assisted living and start a business like this under a Trump administration. I really do believe that's the case. Now, as far as when it comes to funding, I think there will be improved interest rates and more access to capital. I think as the economy improves and it goes better, that we will see a lot of opportunities there with interest rates and access to capital that really help you get things started. And I talk to a lot of you, and I know that that's a big concern for a lot of you. And I really think that that's something that is going to improve under a Trump administration. And over the next 4 years, allow you to get in and operate these businesses and be successful and be profitable and have a solid impact and positive impact on your communities. So that's another piece that I can see there for sure. Now, like, I give it a thumbs up. I think now is as good a time as any to get started. I really do. I would have said this under a Harris administration. There would have been different things. I think there would have been positives under that administration as well. I think would have been access to other types of programs and things like that. I mean, we're not going to get into that because that's not what happens. It's not the reality that we're living in. So I think that it would have been fine there as well. But like, regardless, I think assisted living is an incredible opportunity to get in at the ground level before the silver tsunami really hits, and you can ride that wave for the next 20 to 40 years and really have a lot of success and really make a huge impact on the communities that you're living in. So it's something that I really still am very bullish on and think you can be successful with this. So my outlook, go for it. I think this is a great opportunity. All right. So let's get into Q&A. I see there's quite a few questions over there. But before we get into that, I want to make sure I remind people to like the video, subscribe, and ring the bell so you get notified. Yesterday we tried to go live, had audio issues, so we did it today, and you don't get notified unless you were ringing the bell there on YouTube. So excited to have those of you that were able to make this on like absolutely notice, because I have been busy all day and forgot to put it in the Facebook group that that we were going live. But also, just make sure you want to do that. Go grab the business plan checklist, assistedlivinginvesting.net/BP checklist. We got the ticker going down below. And if you need some help as you're going through this process, you need some extra guidance, consider applying to the Mastermind program. It's alimastermind.com. Free application. Just lets me see if I can help you or not. And if I can, I will send you all the details and you can decide if it's a good fit for you or not. Again, that's alimastermind.com. Free application. Lets me see if I can help you. If I can, then I'll send you all the details and you decide if it's a good fit for you or not. All right, let's get into questions here. Let's see here. I feel like there's a way for me to mark these that they're done. Nope. Okay. So let's see. Newbie. All right. For Miss Sunday, let's see. I'm going to show this one. For a start, what would you recommend, government programs, clients, or private? It's a good question. So if you are buying an existing facility, I would say go with what is already there. I would work with that population. So it could be that you're working with a population that is private pay. I would keep going with that private pay type of a population and working with them and trying to build up that clientele. If you're working with a Medicaid population, I would stick with that, and then you could progressively see if you want to move things over to private pay. I think both are going to be fine for you. I personally like Medicaid. I like working in government programs. I'm very familiar with that industry. I've worked in that side of healthcare for a long time. I understand everything that goes into it and what it takes to be successful there. So I'm not scared of it. And I think that gives me a very good competitive advantage because a lot of people are. So that's something that I can use to set myself apart. And that's something I talk about and teach you in the Mastermind program. Again, that's alimastermind.com. So as you're going into this, I really think it depends. And it depends on every single deal is unique, and you have to underwrite it and understand what you're getting into. In the underwriting calculator that I give away, just go to assistedlivinginvesting.net and grab the calculator, just via the big blue button in the top right corner. There on the 24-month pro forma, there's a spot where you can put in the rates for private and Medicaid for assisted living and memory care. So you're able to put those things in there, then you could really see exactly what that's going to look like. So that's something that I would encourage you to also do is underwrite it and see which one of those is going to make the most sense. The other thing that is a misnomer, and for those watching, would love to, if you want me to dive a little bit deeper into Medicaid, type in Medicaid down below, because I could definitely get into this a little bit deeper in another video. But there's a misnomer, I think, with Medicaid that it's very simplified and you only get a certain amount. And that could be the case in certain states, but we have found in Idaho that we've been able to increase daily rates based off the amount of care that we're providing to residents. We have to document all of this and we have to show it, but we've been able to increase rates from like $80 a day to $150, $160 a day, like almost doubling the amount that comes into us simply by documenting the work that we are doing and then demonstrating that to our nurses and to case managers. The process there is not it's not complicated. There's just more paperwork involved, but you can raise rates and you can get really high paying residents in Medicaid. Like I'm gonna do. I think I've got in line a video on this scheduled for early next year about Medicaid and how I have gotten $12,000 a bed with Medicaid or a room with Medicaid, and I've been able to do that. So if that's something that's interesting to you, you want to learn more about it, then just type in Medicaid down below. I can definitely get into that in another video. So thanks for that comment, Leandro. Yes, I am live, and thanks for joining. I'll skip all the other ones for you. Thanks for being here, Leandro. So approximately how much do I need to start a 6-bed assisted living? That's a good question. I think it depends largely on are you buying an existing facility or are you going to be buying a home to do this? If you're buying a home, and it very much is dependent on the real estate and how much that real estate is going to cost you. So, for just very round numbers, let's say you're getting something for $500,000. Okay. When you're going the SBA route, it's an existing facility, 6 beds, it's licensed for that. You're buying it for $500,000. Your down payment for that is going to be 15 to 20%. So let's just say it's 20%. That puts you at about $100,000 down. As you go into needing some extra operating capital, I suggest you get 2 to 6 months. You do your underwriting process, figure out what that's going to look like for you, and then you ask for that. The nice thing with SBA is you can actually ask for that as you're getting the loan. So that's something that I want you to be aware of as well, that you can say, I need an extra $50,000 for operating capital. You can build that into your request up front, and you don't have to have that $50,000 of extra capital. You've got to have 20% of that as a part of your down payment. So that's something. Now, if you're going to buy an existing home and then you're going to renovate it, you're looking at probably 25 to 30% down. So in that scenario, let's just say it's 30% because it's easier math for me on the fly. That's going to be $150,000 down. Plus, you're probably going to need to get an extra SBA loan for operating capital. So that's an extra $50,000, and you need another 20% of that. So do the math on there. I can't do all this math in my head on the fly. $10,000 there. So you're looking at something like $160,000 down in that scenario, plus potentially any renovations you need to do, which could be $20,000 to $100,000. It just kind of depends. So it really does. Each individual situation is unique. Now, the other thing I want to point out is you don't have to have all that money yourself. You can work with people, partner, use other people's money to help you get to those goals is another thing. And that's where we went back to the funding thing. I think in an improved economy, that can open up doors to more investors being open to working with you. So that's one thing there. Angel was wondering, are you doing mentorship for beginners? If so, how much? Yes. So we've got the Mastermind program, alimastermind.com. Thanks for asking. It's free application, so you can go in there and just apply. It takes you 5 minutes. I ask you a few questions. Let me see if I can help you or not. And if I can, I will send you all the details. And then including the price, there's a webinar, talks about everything that's in there. And then if you feel like you still need a conversation, then just reach out to me and I can have that conversation with you. If it's not a good fit, then I have other programs. So you can go to assistedlivinginvesting.net/shop, SHOP, and you can look at all the different products that I have there. The Mastermind program is on there as well on that website. But if you go through the application process, you will get a discounted price on that. Significantly, it's about 46% discount, up to a 46% discount. So if you go through the application process, it's the best way for you to see if it's a good fit for you or not. And it's no pressure. Like if you want to jump on a call with me, I can definitely do that and make sure I answer your questions. But I do that because it saves me a bunch of time. I love talking with you all, but my calendar fills up way too much when I open up for strategy calls, and I just don't have time because I want to serve the people in the Mastermind program a little bit better. And so we've automated this through our application process. So again, it's alimastermind.com. Just go apply there. Medicaid. All right. We got a few comments here. Tanya, Jonica, Medicaid in North Carolina. Very good. You're welcome, Miss Sunday. Leandro. So if you've got the home already, then you're probably looking at just the renovation. So if you've got the home, you've got a licenses. So we have somebody in the Mastermind program right now that's looking at doing this. We've been chatting with the city and the fire department and figuring out exactly what needs to happen inside the house for her. And the quote we're at, I think, is about 46,000 is what she needs. So she's going to do hard money to do that renovation to get it in place, and then she'll either refinance that or she'll figure out do a DSCR loan. She'll figure out something with that on the back end, but that's kind of the plan up front. So for her, it was 46,000. But I don't. It's hard for me to know. She's got a home. She's going to have about 16 residents in there. I wouldn't say that you have a 6 divided by 16 and then apply that number to 46,000. That's what you're looking at. Like there's no way for me to say, because you could live in California, it could be super expensive. You could live in Texas and it's not very much. It's just kind of hard to say. You have to work through things. And then I also suggest that you get that money upfront for operating capital 2 to 6 months. So you do your underwriting, figure out what that's going to be. And that's another chunk that you want to have. So you could be looking at $20,000. You could be looking at $100,000, just kind of, or even more, just kind of depends on the scenario, the house, what needs to be done to it, and what that's going to look like. Hope that helps. And you're welcome. And you're welcome as well, Angel. Thank you. Cool. So for those of you, thanks for being here. Like, this has been really good. A lot of good conversations and things like that. I want to remind people to go grab that free business plan checklist. Again, it's assistedlivinginvesting.net/BP checklist. And can help you out there for sure. And it sounds like the audio has been better on this video, so I'm grateful for that, because I was really frustrated yesterday when it wasn't working. When I got off and it found out it wasn't going, I was not very happy. Anyways, thanks for being here. Thanks for watching. Does residential assisted living sound interesting to you, but you don't know how to get started? At assistedlivinginvesting.net, I'm here to help beginners like you launch their assisted living business in the next 12 months. And I also want to thank you for watching, but remind you that it doesn't take a lot, just a little bit. Just keep going, keep making progress step by step by step. And I promise you that if you do and you're consistent and persistent, you're going to be successful. So thanks for watching. And Leandro, yeah, it's going to be in Tampa, Florida. Going to be less than California probably, but still kind of costly. I think Florida's kind of expensive. So there's a process you want to go through there. So yeah, I would check out, I would have conversations there. But thanks again for watching, everybody. And we'll chat with you next week. Have a great day.